Okay, picture this. Early morning, June 13th, 2025. Tehran is rocked by these widespread explosions.
Yeah, just massive sounds being reported.
Exactly. And then news breaks, a major Israeli operation is underway. Reports are just flooding in about casualties, serious damage. And what the timeline we're looking at today really frames as a huge escalation.
A pivotal moment, absolutely, based on how this account lays it out.
Welcome to the deep dive.
Welcome.
So here we are again, ready to tackle another complex topic. We've got this really detailed source material in front of us specifically, a timeline that tracks the back and forth, the rising tensions, the hostilities between Israel and Iran. And our job, our mission in this deep dive is to comb through it, to pull out the crucial bits, the key connections, those moments you really need to grasp to understand this relationship, all based strictly on what's presented in this timeline.
That's the key, isn't it? It's not about drowning in every single detail, but finding the thread, following the story that this specific chronology tells. We're going to walk through it step by step.
See how things evolved, how the hostility ramped up, especially leading into those, well, frankly, stunning events described for June 13th, 2025. The level of detail there is something else.
It really is. So we'll unpack the facts as they're presented here, trace that pattern of action and reaction, and really highlight what stands out in this particular sequence of events.
Okay, let's do it. Where does this timeline actually kick things off? Takes us back quite a way, doesn't it?
It does. We start way back in 2010, in the digital realm, actually, with the discovery of the Stuxnet computer virus.
Stuxnet, right. And the source material we have mentions, it's widely thought to be a joint effort, U.S. and Israeli.
Yes, exactly. And its effect, as described right here in the source, was very targeted. It apparently disrupted and even destroyed Iranian centrifuges.
Centrifuges.
Yeah.
Maybe just a quick reminder for folks, key equipment for uranium enrichment.
Precisely. Vital for nuclear fuel, but also potentially for weapons-grade material. So hitting those centrifuges hits right at the heart of the nuclear program concerns.
So the very first entry in this timeline, as it's laid out for us, is this sophisticated cyber attack. Not bombs, not spies initially, but code aimed at crippling nuclear infrastructure.
Right.
What does that tell us right off the bat about how this conflict is framed in this account?
Well, it immediately sets the stage, doesn't it? It flags Iran's nuclear program as a central point of contention from the start, and it establishes this pattern of using, let's say, indirect or non-traditional methods, covert, high-tech sabotage.
Yeah, not necessarily boots on the ground or overt military action, but undermining capability through technology.
Yeah.
It signals that the nuclear issue is absolutely core right from the documented beginning here.
And it shows the layers involved. It's not just armies, it's cyber warfare, intelligence agencies likely playing a role from day one, according to this narrative.
Okay, so fast forward a bit. The timeline then shifts, moving into the world of intelligence around 2018.
That's right. This is when the source mentions Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu claiming Israel got its hands on tens of thousands of pages of data.
And the claim was this data proved Iran had covered up parts of its nuclear program before that big 2015 international deal, the JCPOA.
Exactly. And the source adds this almost Bond movie detail, citing a former Mossad chief.
Israel's intelligence agency.
Right, who apparently confirmed this info was snatched by, get this, more than a dozen non-Israeli agents straight out of safes inside Tehran in 2018.
Wow. Inside Tehran by non-Israelis.
Yeah.
That specific detail. What does that suggest about the conflict dynamics as presented here?
It speaks volumes, doesn't it? It points to, well, a pretty deep level of intelligence penetration, maybe using proxies or third-party networks. It paints a picture of this intense, high-stakes shadow war focused on information about the nuclear program.
So it's moved from damaging physical infrastructure with Stuxnet to acquiring secret information, both laser-focused on the nuclear issue.
And it fuels the political side accusations about cheating on deals, past activities. The source specifically frames that 2015 deal as being intended to keep Iran from developing nuclear weapons, so this alleged discovery feeds right into that narrative.
Okay, so we have cyber, we have espionage, both targeting the nuclear program. It's definitely painting a picture of a multi-front conflict aimed at preventing Iran's nuclear ambitions, as described in this source.
And then crucially, the timeline connects the dots. It says that after that 2015 deal started to fall apart, the alleged Israeli attacks against Iran's nuclear program stepped up significantly. This is around 2020.
So there's a direct link drawn in this narrative between the fate of that international agreement and the intensity of the actions described.
It seems so, and that brings us to a period where the timeline starts listing more, well, kinetic events, actual physical attacks on facilities and even people between 2020 and 2022. Things seem to get more tangible.
Right. First up is July 2020. A mysterious explosion hits a centrifuge production plant at Natanz, key nuclear site again.
And the source notes Iran pointed the finger directly at Israel, said the blast tore apart the plant. So this feels like a step up from Stuxnet physical sabotage, more destructive perhaps, though still not like a conventional bombing raid.
Then, just months later, November 2020, comes that really dramatic incident, the assassination of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, described here as a top Iranian military nuclear scientist.
The details in the source are quite chilling. Killed by a remote-controlled machine gun on a road outside Tehran. An Iranian security official, according to this account, blamed Israel, saying they used electronic devices to pull it off remotely.
Okay, moving from facilities to targeting a key person, and the method described remote control weapon. What does that shift signify based on this timeline's telling?
It's a major shift in targeting philosophy, isn't it? Going after a specific individual, especially one identified in this source as the founder of Iran's military nuclear program back in the 2000s, it suggests an aim to perhaps decapitate the program's leadership or expertise.
Taking out key figures.
Right. And the method itself, if the source's description is accurate, points towards highly sophisticated, maybe even state-level assassination technology. Definitely an escalation in tactics.
A serious escalation. Then, fast forward again, April 2021, Natanz gets hit again. This time, the target is the underground facility there.
And again, the source says Iran blames Israel. Now, Israel doesn't claim responsibility in this account, but the timeline notes that Israeli media widely reported it was a government-orchestrated cyber attack causing a blackout.
So, possibly a cyber attack with physical consequences. Still focused on that critical Natanz site.
Seems like it. And Iran's reaction, as documented here, comes very quickly. Just 5 days later, April 2021, they start enriching uranium up to 60% purity.
60%. And the source makes a point of saying this is their highest purity ever, and crucially, a technical step from weapons-grade levels of 90%.
That sequence is telling, isn't it? Attack on Natanz facility.
Followed immediately by a significant jump in enrichment level.
It looks like a direct tit-for-tat within the nuclear sphere itself, according to this narrative. Action against their program leads to a reaction that advances their program closer to potential weaponization. It highlights that escalatory cycle.
Definitely seems that way. Then, June 2022, there's another entry. Iran accuses Israel of poisoning 2 nuclear scientists in different cities just 3 days apart.
The source adds a caveat here, saying the circumstances remained unclear. That's important. It signals uncertainty in this specific account. But the accusation itself continues that theme of targeting key scientific personnel following Fakhrizadeh's killing.
Right. So up to this point, the picture painted by the timeline is this simmering, often covert conflict, mostly about the nuclear program, using cyber, espionage, sabotage, targeting scientists, facilities. It's intense, but maybe below the radar of full-scale war, as described here.
Exactly. But then the timeline marks a huge shift. October 7th, 2023.
The Hamas attack on Israel. The source gives the basic grim details. Hamas militants attack from Gaza, kill around 1,200 people, take 250 hostage, igniting what it calls the most intense war between Israel and Hamas.
And the crucial link made in this source is that Iran, which has armed Hamas, offered the militants support.
So the timeline doesn't just mention October 7th in isolation. It explicitly connects it to the Iran-Israel dynamic within this narrative, framing it as a catalyst.
A major turning point, according to this account. It suggests this event dragged the existing, often shadowy Israel-Iran conflict into a much wider, more violent regional storm involving Iran's allies and proxies. How does the positioning of October 7th here influence how we read the rest of the timeline?
Where you see an immediate change in the tempo and nature of events described afterwards. Post-October 7, 2023, the timeline shows actions escalating much more rapidly through 2024, becoming more overt, targeting different kinds of assets and people.
Let's walk through that. February 14th, 2024, Valentine's Day, ironically. The source reports an alleged Israeli sabotage attack causing explosions on an Iranian natural gas pipeline.
So still infrastructure, but now outside the nuclear program focus, targeting energy infrastructure. It hints at the conflict possibly broadening its scope, as presented.
Then a really big one, April 1st, 2024. An Israeli airstrike completely demolishes Iran's consulate building in Damascus, Syria.
This feels like a threshold being crossed. The source says 16 people killed, including 2 Iranian generals. This isn't covert, it's not inside Iran, it's not a proxy target. It's a direct hit on Iranian state property, a diplomatic mission no less, and high-ranking military officials, in a third country.
A very significant escalation is described here. What does targeting a consulate suggest?
It signals a willingness, based on this account, to hit targets previously considered perhaps off limits, raising the stakes considerably. Very public, very direct.
And Iran's reported response was equally headline-grabbing. April 14th, 2024, the timeline calls it an unprecedented missile and drone attack on Israel.
Explicitly framed in the source as retaliation for that Damascus strike. The scale mentioned is huge, over 300 missiles and drones launched.
Though the source also notes that Israel, with help from a U.S.-led international coalition, managed to intercept much of the incoming fire.
Right. But the act itself is the key thing here in this timeline. The first direct, large-scale military exchange between the two countries described. It's out of the shadows now. State-on-state attacks. A major shift according to this chronology.
Then, just a few days later, April 19th, 2024, the timeline notes a suspected Israeli strike. This one hits an air defense system near Isfahan Airport in Iran.
This seems, based on the description, maybe more limited. A targeted strike inside Iran, perhaps a calibrated response to Iran's big barrage, trying to make a point without triggering an all-out war at that moment.
Could be interpreted that way. But the post-Hoc 7th period, as documented here, also shows this intense focus on taking out leaders of groups linked to Iran.
Yeah, that really ramps up. July 31st, 2024. Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh assassinated. The source says it was an apparent Israeli airstrike, and significantly it happened while he was visiting Tehran.
Struck inside Iran's capital. The source explicitly links this to Israel's vow after October 7th to eliminate Hamas leaders. So the conflict's geography is expanding according to this narrative.
Then, September 27th, 2024. An Israeli airstrike kills Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. The source reminds us Hezbollah was formed by Iran's Revolutionary Guard, calls it Iran's first major proxy group. Taking out Nasrallah is huge, striking at a key Iranian ally.
Absolutely. A major blow to a group central to Iran's regional strategy, as presented here.
And then, October 16th, 2024, another top Hamas figure, Yahya Sinwar, is killed by Israel in Gaza. Again, part of that post-October campaign against Hamas leadership.
So a series of high-profile killings of leaders linked to Iran. But amidst that, Iran acts directly again. October 1st, 2024, the timeline records Iran launching its second direct attack on Israel.
And again, the source says the U.S.-led coalition in Israel shot down most of the missiles.
Sure.
So another direct attempt, but based on this description, perhaps not very effective in terms of impact.
Then comes another landmark moment, flagged specifically in the source. October 26th, 2024. It says Israel openly attacks Iran for the first time.
Okay, that phrasing, openly attacks for the first time. How is that different from the previous suspected strikes inside Iran, like the one near Isfahan?
According to this source, it marks a deliberate shift. The targets mentioned are air defense systems and sites associated with its missile program. The word openly suggests Israel either took responsibility or the attack was undeniable and clearly attributed, unlike some earlier, more ambiguous incidents. It's presented as moving beyond plausible deniability for strikes on Iranian soil targeting military assets. Another rung up the ladder.
From shadows to suspected strikes to now open attacks, it's a clear progression. Then just one more entry before we hit the big one in June 2025. This is April 30th, 2025.
Right. Iran executes a man they claimed worked for Mossad and was involved in killing an IRGC colonel named Hassan Sayed Kodai way back in May 2022.
What's the significance of including this right before the June events?
It serves as a reminder, as presented here, of that ongoing, deadly intelligence war simmering beneath the surface. Espionage, counter-espionage, assassinations, executions. It connects back to earlier themes like the 2018 data theft and the Fakhrizadeh killing, showing that shadow conflict persisted alongside the more overt military actions.
Okay, so putting it all together, this timeline charts a course from early cyber skirmishes and spy games, primarily over the nuclear program, through sabotage, assassinations of scientists, and proxy leaders, escalating significantly after October 7th, 2023.
Right, that seems to be the key accelerator in this account.
Leading to direct missile duels. However intercepted, Israel's first acknowledged open attack on Iran, and this persistent undercurrent of lethal intelligence operations. It's a definite accelerating trajectory as laid out chronologically here.
And that path leads directly to the doorstep of June 13th, 2025. And this is where the source material really zooms in, providing a level of granular detail that suggests this event is considered exceptionally significant within this specific narrative.
All right, let's really dig into those details for June 13th. The timeline describes this as a massive Israeli assault.
Massive is the word. Early hours of June 13th, the IDF launches what's called a large-scale strike, and the source gives specific timing by 6:30 a.m. Israel time. 5 waves of strikes had already been carried out by the Israeli Air Force.
5 waves by 6:30 a.m., and the scale reported. Over 200 Israeli aircraft dropped over 330 munitions on around 100 targets, just in those initial hours.
Yeah.
Compared to everything else listed before in the timeline, those numbers alone, they just jump off the page.
Absolutely. It immediately signals something far bigger, far more concentrated than the earlier tit-for-tat strikes or targeted killings described previously. This sounds like a major coordinated military operation.
And it even had a name, which also sets it apart. Netanyahu announced Operation Rising Lion.
Giving it a name like that definitely frames it as a distinct, significant military campaign as presented here.
Okay, the targets. The source says the focus was on dozens of sites, including, no surprise, locations associated with Iran's nuclear program, but also key military commanders and bases.
It gets specific. Natanz, obviously the main enrichment plant, FEP, and the pilot plant, PFEP. Other nuclear sites like Khandab and Karamabad reportedly hit. Tabriz struck again later in the day, so a very comprehensive hit on the known nuclear infrastructure as described.
But crucially, not just nuclear sites this time, right?
Yeah.
Which adds to the sense of scale.
Exactly. The source mentions military bases near Tehran and even specific residential neighborhoods where senior commanders supposedly live. It names Shahrak-e-Mahalladi. Plus, the IRGC headquarters in Tehran reportedly set ablaze.
Targeting military HQs and where commanders live. What does that broader target set suggest, according to this account?
It implies an objective beyond just degrading the nuclear program, hitting command centers, potentially trying to take out leadership at home. It points to a much wider goal, maybe aiming to cripple military command and control, possibly connecting back to that post-Oct 7th focus on eliminating key figures.
And then there's the reported role of Mossad. This adds a whole other layer of complexity to the operation, as described.
It really does. An Israeli official is cited in the source saying Mossad ran a coordinated set of secret sabotage missions at the same time as the airstrikes, targeting Iran's air defenses and missile infrastructure.
And the details are pretty wild. Establishing a covert drone base near Tehran to hit missile launchers, smuggling in precision weapons, deploying Mossad commandos to disable air defenses to clear the way for the jets.
Yeah, and the source adds the detail that these targets were not anticipated by Tehran.
Okay, so what does including these alleged highly complex Mossad operations alongside the conventional air attack tell us about how Operation Rising Lion is being portrayed in this source?
It paints a picture of an incredibly sophisticated, multi-layered operation, doesn't it? Not just bombing runs. It suggests deep intelligence penetration, special forces operating on the ground inside Iran, pre-positioning assets, electronic warfare perhaps, all working in concert to maximize the airstrike's effectiveness by taking out defenses first.
That covert drone base near Tehran, if accurate as reported here, is just wow. It suggests a level of planning and execution far beyond anything else mentioned earlier in the timeline.
Definitely a different league, as described. Now, the justifications offered for this massive operation, as reported in the source, also circle back to the core themes.
Right. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, reportedly declared a national state of emergency very early, around 3 a.m. local time, and called the attack a preemptive strike.
Preemptive. That word choice is key. And the IDF's stated reason, according to the source, was intelligence suggesting Iran had enough enriched uranium to make up to 15 nuclear weapons within days.
15 weapons within days. That frames it as an absolutely urgent, imminent threat, directly justifying a large-scale preemptive attack in this account.
Prime Minister Netanyahu's justification, also quoted in the source, echoed this urgency. He reportedly said Israel had to act because, if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time, less than a year. He specifically mentioned targeting Natanz nuclear scientists and the ballistic missile program, hitting all those key areas we saw targeted individually before, but now all at once.
And he declared the operation wasn't a one-off, it would continue for as many days as it takes. He framed Iran's nuclear program as an existential threat, a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival, and even positioned Israel as defending Arab neighbors, too. Strong justifications provided in the source.
Very strong. And the immediate reports from the ground, as relayed in the source, convey the chaos. Explosions across Tehran, near bases, and those residential areas mentioned. Eyewitnesses describing massive flames and repeated blasts.
Media reports seem to back this up, according to the source. Fars News, linked to the IRGC, reported homes hit in that Shahrak-e-Mahalladi neighborhood. State TV confirmed loud explosions near Natanz. And significantly, the IAEA, the UN nuclear watchdog, is reported to have confirmed the damage.
Their confirmation, noted here, adds external weight to the claim that nuclear sites were indeed hit and damaged.
In the immediate aftermath, around 4:30 a.m. Israeli time, the source says Iran hadn't yet responded. Netanyahu convened his security cabinet. You get a sense of that initial uncertainty, that holding a breath as described.
Definitely. Now, the casualty reports in the source are where things get complex, including some conflicting information right away. Senior Iranian commanders were reportedly killed. The IDF claimed they got Major General Mohammad Bagheri, the chief of staff of the entire Iranian armed forces.
But
But the source notes, Iranian state media IRNA denied that specific claim. However, the semi-official Fars news agency apparently corroborated the IDF claim.
so conflicting reports immediately on a top figure. What does that tell us about the information flow as reported here?
Classic fog of war, right? It shows how hard it is to get verified facts, especially about high-value targets, in the heat of such a major event. Competing narratives emerge instantly.
What was reported as confirmed by Iranian state media, according to the source.
The deaths of IRGC commander Hossein Salami, later confirmed by the IRGC itself, and another senior commander, Gholam Ali Rashid. Also, Ali Shamkhani, a key advisor to the supreme leader, was reported critically injured and later died. So even setting aside the disputed Bagheri claim, the reported confirmed deaths include very senior figures.
And the targeting of scientists pops up again. We saw Fakhri's day earlier, the alleged poisonings.
Yes, the source's account says Iranian state media reported scientists Fariboon Abbasi and Mohammad Mehdi Taranchi were killed, and Tasnim News later added 4 more names: Abdulhamid Minusher, Ahmadreza Zulfagari, Sayyidin Mirasain Faki, and Malabazadeh.
So that pattern of targeting the human element of the nuclear program continued, as reported here, even within this massive conventional strike.
And tragically, the source also notes local media reporting civilian casualties, including women and children. Tasnim News gave specifics. Over 50 injured just in Tehran's Tajrish district, 35 of them women and children, taken to a hospital. This detail aligns with the reported strikes on residential areas where commanders lived, highlighting the devastating collateral impact as described.
The immediate aftermath described in the source sounds chaotic too. Widespread disruption.
Yeah, Iran suspended flights at Tehran's main international airport, Imam Khomeini, even though the airport itself wasn't hit, shows the level of disruption or maybe precaution. Pilgrim flights canceled. Israeli airports suspended flights too. And neighbors Iraq and Jordan closed their airspace entirely. Big regional ripple effect reported here.
Security measures ramped up dramatically on Israel's side too, right?
Absolutely. According to the source, Israel declared a state of special emergency, shut down its airspace, closed schools, banned large gatherings, clearly bracing for retaliation, and they called up tens of thousands of IDF reservists. That's a major mobilization, suggesting they expected something significant back.
And the ripples went global. The source mentions the NYPD deploying extra resources to Jewish sites in New York. Shows the perceived level of tension worldwide as reported.
Even the markets reacted instantly. Oil prices jumped 7%, highest in a month. Classic sign of major Middle East instability impacting the global economy, as detailed here.
Okay, so what about Iran's response? They promised a harsh response. What actually happened, according to the source?
Well, based on an IDF Brigadier General, Effie Defrin, cited in the source, Iran launched more than 100 Shahed drones towards Israel.
Over 100 drones. Sirens reportedly went off not just in Israel, but also in Amman, Jordan.
Right, indicating the flight path. And the source says some were intercepted over Jordan by the Jordanian Air Force, others over Saudi Arabia and Syria by the Israeli Air Force. Again, showing regional involvement in Israel's defense, according to this account.
And the outcome of that drone attack.
Based on various Israeli sources cited in the source material, the all-clear was eventually given. The order for civilians to shelter was lifted, which suggested that majority or all of the drones were destroyed.
So if we take this account at face value, Iran launches over 100 drones in response to this massive, multifaceted Israeli operation.
Yeah.
But as reported here, the drone attack seems to have been largely neutralized.
That's the picture painted in this specific source.
Yeah.
A significant Israeli strike involving air power, special ops, hitting nuclear, military, and leadership targets, followed by an Iranian drone retaliation that, based on the outcome described here, appears to have had limited success. It suggests, within this narrative, a potential disparity in the effectiveness of that immediate exchange.
Wow, okay. That is an incredibly detailed blow-by-blow for June 13th, 2025. Far more detail than any other single event in the timeline.
It really stands out, doesn't it? The focus given to it in the source underlines its perceived importance in this whole sequence.
So, stepping back now, looking at the whole arc presented in this timeline, from Stuxnet in 2010 all the way to these events in June 2025, the pattern of escalation seems undeniable based on this specific account.
You really can trace it. Starts covert cyber espionage focused on the nuclear program,
Uh-huh.
then moves to more overt physical actions, sabotage like Natanz, targeted killings like Fakhrizadeh and the scientists, still often plausibly deniable, or at least not always openly claimed in the source.
Then the timeline clearly shows things getting drawn into wider regional conflicts involving proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah, especially after October 7th, 2023, leading to those high-profile assassinations of their leaders.
Right, Octo 7th acting as that major accelerant in this narrative. And that pushes things towards direct state-on-state conflict. The Damascus consulate strike, Iran's big missile and drone responses, Israel's first open attack in late 2024.
Culminating in this huge, complex Operation Rising Lion, described for June 13th, 2025. It's a clear trajectory, less visible to more visible, indirect to direct, smaller scale to massive scale, as laid out here.
And throughout it all, that nuclear program remains the central, persistent issue. Stuxnet targeted it, the 2018 intel was about it, Natanz was hit multiple times, Iran's 60% enrichment was a response related to it, and it was the primary justification given in the source for Operation Rising Lion. It's the constant thread.
And we can't overstate the impact of October 7th, based on how this timeline structures events. It's presented as the moment the fuse was truly lit for this rapid acceleration towards direct, high-stakes confrontation and the targeting of major figures. It shows how the Israel-Hamas war and the existing Israel-Iran tensions became dangerously intertwined, according to this account.
The variety of tactics used is also striking when you see them listed chronologically. Cyber, spies, sabotage, assassination by remote control, pipeline bombs, consulate airstrikes, massive drone missile barrages, integrated conventional and special ops. It's a multi-dimensional conflict fought on many fronts based on the methods described.
And as we've discussed, the sheer scale and reported complexity of Operation Rising Lion, the number of planes, the munitions, the broad target set, that alleged intricate Mossad role, it just seems leagues beyond previous actions described in this source. Even that first open attack in 2024, it's presented as a game changer.
So, wrapping this up for our listeners, why does walking through this specific timeline matter? What does it help you understand?
Well, as it's presented here, it gives crucial context for the reason's volatility. It lays out the motivations and justifications claimed by the actors within this source, especially concerning the nuclear threat and regional power plays.
And it really illustrates that potential for incredibly rapid escalation based on the sequence shown. It demonstrates how these long, simmering strategic tensions, mainly over the nuclear issue, got tangled up with regional proxy wars, and how a single event like October 7th could, according to this narrative, dramatically shift the trajectory towards open conflict. Following this timeline helps make sense of that dangerous path.
Yeah, we've journeyed from those early digital shadows and covert ops targeting the nuclear program to increasingly direct confrontations, hitting broader targets like military HQs and leaders, ultimately leading to this account of a massive, complex military operation aimed at Iran's core strategic capabilities and leadership, as detailed in this source.
So here's the final thought. Based only on the information and the sequence presented in this specific timeline we've examined today, we see this cycle: attack, reaction, escalation, justification. Considering the reported scale and sophistication of Operation Rising Lion on June 13th and the described outcome of Iran's immediate retaliation in this account, what does this specific historical narrative suggest about where things might go next? What question does this particular chronicle leave you pondering?